Good evening. How are you? Happy 4th of July. It was about 93 degrees an hour ago. It's about 83 now, 7-ish or so. The light is beautiful this time of day. Tuscan yellow light. That's what I think of it as. I don't know if that's justified or not, but it strikes me there's like a golden tone late in the evening. And in some places on the earth, it's like they own these colors. They own this light. And so on this day, some of us go to parades. In past years, I rode a motorcycle dressed as Thomas Jefferson and went to several parades. I did it a couple of years in a row. It was a lot of fun. But I've since sold my bikes, and I didn't do that today. And Holly and I have been so camped out and continue to be, choosing carefully what we go out to do. But today we thought we'd drive by IHOP and see how busy that was. And in Frederick, it was like empty. So we went in there and we were quite isolated, and we had that. So then we thought, well, there's a movie house nearby. What if nobody's going to the movie house on the 4th of July? And sure as shooting, we went over there and we saw Harrison Ford's flick with a thing that I wasn't familiar with. 4DX. Fourth dimension, I guess. You get knocked around. And I don't know if you really have 3 dimensions, but anyhow, it was a lot of fun. And I did think to myself, how can you do another Harrison Ford movie? They did it. And I think one of the ways they did it, different writers, a lot of the same cast, of course. But it worked for me, but, guys like things blowing up and so forth, and there's a lot of that. But Holly enjoyed it, and she's not of that class. So if you're able to get out, you still go to the big movie houses. There are a couple that don't have a lot of attendance, and they've made over this whole movie house out there in Frederick. So what am I thinking about on the 4th of July? Well, you can't get away from certain things that are distressing. We have had a Philadelphia shooting, in which 5 dead, and then others wounded. It was, I think it's the most recent one, and it's the 29th mass killing in 2023. Baltimore, we just had 2 people killed, 28 wounded. We also had in Texas, and I think this may be pretty close to when the Philadelphia shooting happened separately in Texas. 3 were killed, 8 injured. So what do we fight for on our Declaration of Independence? And I think it was self-government. And we're not governing ourselves when it comes to that. And we are leaving behind, according to the Declaration of Independence, our early promise in 1776 that people would be treated equally, and that they would have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. These are high-flung ideals, Platonic in nature, and we have strived imperfectly to guarantee them, but we have to rededicate ourselves on this Independence Day to do just that. If you think about independence, was that there were 13 colonies, and at first they just wanted to have a change of order because of the offenses of Great Britain to its colonies. And as time went on, that wasn't satisfactory. And one by one, including Virginia, where I am, they decided they wanted a separate state. They wanted to govern themselves. And that's both the challenge and the responsibility. And it was not an easy thing to have our nation separate itself. It was great risk, and you could say it was about property, but nobody knew how it was going to come out. And the offenses of quartering troops and insisting on taxes and so on. There were opportunities for Great Britain to make us one, if not happy, workable family. And, the argument that no taxation without representation, well, think about it. If we had been made part of the Parliament, our vote couldn't have changed anything the majority would have wanted. So the abuses were not so much philosophical as political, not so much impractical as a demand for freedom. And that freedom had contours that were defined by the abuses they felt by the British. And, you know, the philosophy was not new. I mean, Locke and his writings and others in the Enlightenment, they gave the, if you will, the song, the coda for our independence, made it a legitimate thought. You know, and Thomas Paine with common sense at that time, and the people feeling that they were abused and hurt and so forth. So what we're celebrating today, I think, is our right to self-governance. And the Declaration of Independence was the first draft of what that meant. As we discarded the abuses of Great Britain, what were we going to be? Who were we going to be? Well, self-government. We were going to be a representative government, but we weren't perfectly at first. Everybody was going to be equal, but we weren't. Women weren't part of the team. And a person who was indentured or a slave, or didn't have property, didn't have voting rights. And the House, the People's House, was the only one that was directly elected. And how that worked was more complicated than this little walk can do. So we started out to cobble democracy, and we've often heard, including the Speaker, Pelosi, repeat what Benjamin Franklin said when asked, when they put together the Constitution years after the Declaration of Independence. So, do we have a republic? And he said, Benjamin Franklin said, you have a republic if you can keep it. And right now, it's at risk. It's at risk because we've lost our way. And I go through this time and again, and forgive me for repeating it, but people say, oh, we got to do this or that or the other thing. It seems we need a personnel change. It seems we need a rededication to our first principles as the ideal becomes real. Because we know it wasn't real at the outset. And what we see is people among us who choose phony philosophies and lies and so forth to discourage the ideal that was meant to be a self-governing nation where everybody was equal. And it appears that humans can't do that well. And we had religion as a problem from the beginning. In one part, it was discrimination against the religious. In other, it was the religious involving itself in our civil government and trying to dictate to others who were not of their religion what they should believe and say. So the contours of self-governing, the contours of the rights and freedoms that we want are well known and spread out before us, just as are the offenses that would compromise it. You hear the 4th of July as I walk. So this evening, later this evening, and probably when you get this walk and talk of mine, the darkness will fall and the fireworks will go. But what are we celebrating this year? In my opinion, the only thing you can celebrate is a rededication to the spirit of America, to the words that were uttered at the risk of our founders' lives, and to dedicate ourselves to elect those people that will do it, and to not whisper about these things, but to say them loud and clear and encourage those who are in positions to make a difference to say it as well. So that's my thinking on this 4th of July, and I hope you had a wonderful time. It is a time for relaxation, but mentally, it's also a time to rededicate ourselves to the promise of America, stated in the Declaration of Independence, imperfectly made part of our Constitution. And by the law of the land, we improved upon all of these things until a voice came out in America that would spoil it, decry it, destroy it. And we have to crush these people like bugs. And I'm not talking physically. I mean in terms of the demands they make and the bullying that they exert. We have to end that, because America is really, and must be made again, the land of the free and the home of the brave. And it's going to take some courage to do this right. So I say good evening to you from my Cathedral of Trees. All the best. Bye-bye.